Me and you are older now, man. Mm-hmm. We've reached our golden years, as the saying goes. I want to talk about staying fit after 35. Because it's definitely a big difference from when you're 20. So we have a lot of listeners who are younger. We have a lot of listeners who are older. So I want to talk about how to stay fit after 35. Because your body does change. And I think the thing, most people blame the body. Mm-hmm. You're getting older. You got more joint pain, this, that, and the other thing. More life has happened to you. But I think the thing that throws people off the most, it's not really your body. It's what's going on around your body. Now, think about it. Someone at 20 has very different things they have to worry about than someone who's 35. You know, maybe you have a couple kids. You know, you have a mortgage now. Maybe you have a business, or you work at you're in your professional career. You're at a much different place. Whereas in your 20s, you know, as a guy, you're worrying about chasing tail, and you know, worried about getting through school, and just worried about hanging out. Where you're gonna go hang out at the weekend. So I think that the thing that most people don't talk about is like how to navigate through life and making sure that you stay fit, because a lot of times we start this out when for us anyway, we started when we were young, 15, 14 years old, and we said to ourselves, okay, I want to just get as big as possible, you know, but there's a lot of benefits to that we don't talk about, you know, health standpoint and being strong and, you know, all those other things. So how do you stay fit after 35? And I wanted to talk about kind of like our life experiences with that. Like, so let's start. We'll talk about like those teen years. Yeah. We'll talk about the 20s, and we'll talk about like the tail end of the 20s.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that a lot more can be said about, you know, we're going to get to this. I just want to put it out there so we come back to this. But a lot can be said about when you get older, too. A lot of people just assume that the age is what matters. And like you mentioned, you know, a lot of life stresses can change things more so than your body, you know, more responsibility, more stress. You know, your body handles physical stress and mental stress the exact same way. So whether you do a grueling workout or you have a stressful day at work, your recovery abilities are both going to be impaired. You know, so maybe you didn't go to the gym, but you had such a stressful day. Now your body's going to treat that just like a hard workout session as far as recovery. You're going to need days to recover from that. And when you're younger, you don't necessarily have as many of those days because responsibilities are you have much less responsibilities. So kind of to start at, you know, when you talk about getting in shape like in your teens, we both started, you know, the great thing about it is, you know, responsibility was so low that like the biggest life stress I had was either making it to the gym on time or if I had a good or bad workout, you know, and that's the truth. You know, in my teens, that was my main goal. I just wanted to build muscle. So it was basically eat, sleep, train, repeat, go to school, whatever, hang out with my friends on the weekends, whatever it was I was doing. For me personally, bodybuilding still took principle over all those, priority over all those things. You know, I was always focused on that comes first and everything else comes after it. And when you live a lifestyle like that, whether you're in your teens or whether you're in your 30s, 40s, even 50s, if you're able to, your results are probably going to be better because stress is so much lower. So I think a lot of people will say, I can't do this anymore because I'm in my 40s, my body's all beat up and older. But really, your life at 40 is not what it was when you were in your teens. And I think that's why teens and younger guys get away with doing a lot more. You know, if I were to get banged up from a hard workout, I mean, I used to go out and I would be out 2, 3 in the morning, get up the next day, and the first thing in the morning go train and have a great workout. That's not happening now in my 30s. That workout's going to suffer in some capacity. You know, not to mention I'm not going out to 2, 3 in the morning, but if I'm out that late or I'm up that late, that next morning I'm feeling it. But again, it's not necessarily because of my age. It's because, you know, I have so much other things going on now that build up around, and then that's just kind of like, you know, what do they say? Exactly. So it's like now I have no sleep on top of it. That workout's going to suffer.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think, see, for me, if we could go through those time periods, I was really stressed in my teens when it came to training anyway, because I was always looking for like what worked.
Me too.
Yeah. So that's what would stress me out a lot. And then when I got in I would say my late 20s, like probably around the time that we started like the podcast, like way back when, my late 20s when I stopped being stressed about like what actually worked, because then I was focusing on powerlifting and I kind of knew what worked then. And then it just kind of led me to a whole bunch of other gains and kind of opened up a second window of like opportunity for growth for me during that time. But like in my early teen time, I was really stressed trying to figure out what worked, because everything I did didn't seem to do anything. And that was because I was following what others did. That was my problem. But yeah, I mean, you summed that whole area up very well. I would definitely say that as a teen, it's definitely good to get a coach right off the bat. I think it is good to get a coach right off the bat just to cut that. There's so many ways to learn. Like you can go on YouTube and you can just start Googling things. But I feel like the rabbit hole is much bigger now than when we were younger because when we were younger, we didn't have the internet. So it was books, it was magazines. But again, now you could really go down the rabbit hole with it, and I feel like it'd be way worse. So I think getting a coach early on is good because it will teach you the basics. A good coach actually, like me or Pete or whatever. But it's a good to teach you the basics. Okay, this is how you handle your nutrition. This is how you put weight on. This is how you build muscle. And then again, adapting everything from there. I think that cuts down that curve, and then you could do kind of what Pete was saying, where you just focus everything and that time on growing and getting that and putting that as your forefront because the life stresses around you aren't there.
Yeah, 100%. I think the earlier you start by having a plan that you can do consistently over time without changing it, the better, because that's going to give you the initial results that you're always going to build off of. So what I mean by that is, the main thing that changes over time when you're focusing on building muscle and burning fat is once you build that foundation, like you mentioned earlier, from there it's mostly refining after that. Yeah. And that's where you're going to start using more advanced strategies, different approaches, more extreme approaches for short periods of time. But in the beginning, it's all about that consistency. Like, if you take somebody and their goal is just they want to build as much muscle, if they're a teen, let's just say, or even if they're in their 20s, 30s, whatever it is, but when they haven't trained before, and they come to you and they say, listen, I want to build as much muscle as possible, the first 1 to 3 years is going to be the same thing over and over again consistently, and every year he's going to get bigger, he's going to get stronger, he's going to keep building off of it. Once he reaches kind of that end of his newbie gains, it's going to be about refining, and then all the approaches are going to have to change. And a lot of people forget about that too. They think, okay, this worked so well for the first 3 years, I found the magic bullet, I'm going to do this forever. How you train in the first 1 to 3 years probably looks drastically different from what you do right now.
Oh, yeah.
And it probably, if you were to measure that on a scale and say, okay, how much progress did he make in those 1 to 3 years, it would be better than what you have in the last 3 years. But that's because you started with nothing versus what you have now.
Right.
So people will look at that and say the progress was great those 3 years. That's the best way to train. But no, it's not anymore because you might go backwards doing that now. And I'm sure you probably would actually.
Yeah. So let's move on into the 20s, man. And the 20s are like the time, again, some people start in their 20s. So I guess that first era. But like in your 20s, I would say from 20 to 25 is definitely like one era.
Yes.
Maybe to 28. Things changed a little bit at 26, 27, 28 is like
for me, it was like 27.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so from 20 to 27 is, again, another good time. Yeah. But now, think about the life stresses that are going on. You have a serious partner at this time. You have a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever that you've been with for some time. Still going out. College is ending. Finding your career. So things kind of take a little bit of a back seat. For me it didn't, but for some people it does. But
I probably kicked it into higher gear at that time.
Yeah, me too.
It's not the advice I would give everybody, but that's what I did.
But again, at this point in that time, you're still either you're done with the gym. Most people have stopped already at this point.
Yeah.
Or you're still trying to mitigate and figuring it out. Definitely between 20 and 25, you're still able to kind of fit those workouts in a lot easier while you're in college. You're still partying, kind of figuring out it, playing, right?
Yeah.
Then from 25 to 27, 28, that's when it gets a little difficult because now you've been with somebody probably seriously at this point. Your career is probably just slowly kicking in. So this is when this is like the time test of where people stop.
Right.
Or people, it definitely takes a back seat. So for me, it's all about time management has been one of the things that has helped me so much, and figuring out the time to work out and just planting it in my schedule and just making it a priority.
Yeah. I agree. And one thing that I probably wouldn't have told you in my 20s that I could say now in my 30s that I would not necessarily change, but maybe focus on or prioritize more is I really think, it sounds like when you're in your 20s, everyone's going to tell you, even 30s, 40s, 50s, going to say, oh, your 20s, you're young. But if you're in this for the long haul, I think 20s is kind of the period where you have to start not transitioning, but also mentally shifting your mindset towards longevity in it and taking that long-term realistic approach to it. Because in your teens, you can go crazy, you can do whatever you want, you know what I mean, and you're going to get away with it, but like in your 20s, you'll get away with doing things that aren't realistic. You could beat your body up more, you could take a more extreme approach in other areas of your life, might suffer a little bit from it, and I'm not suggesting that you do that, but you could kind of get away with it, let's say a little bit more than your 30s, but really, that transition period from my 20s to my 30s was harder for me, I think, in terms of finding balance, because I was still in my 20s treating it like I was in my teens. And I think when you get into your 20s, planning ahead and saying, okay, listen, I'm going to be in my 30s and 40s. I still want to do this. I want to bodybuild as long as I'm alive. I don't want to ever have to quit going to the gym. Sure, my approach when I'm 50, 60, 70 is going to be different than I'm 20, 50, teens, 20s, 30s.
One would hope.
Would hope. I can't say for sure. But I think setting yourself up mentally to transition through these phases. I'm in my 30s and I'm thinking, okay, I still want to be lifting heavy in my 40s. I still want to be training hard. So my approach to training is going to be a little bit different now going into that. Sure, I'm not 40 yet. I can still lift some heavy weights. I can still do some things I could do when I was in my teens and 20s. But I know I'm not going to be able to do that forever, and I want to prolong the period that I can do that. So my approach, both with training and with nutrition too, I don't go on extreme deficits if I don't need to. I don't go on extreme bulks either, because I don't want to consistently have to go into dieting phases and burn fat. Eventually, over time, that's going to lead to me having more resistance to dieting. When people get burnt out over time, me and you probably will never get burnt out from this just because of the approach that we take in general. But why add to it to set yourself up to burn out long term? You know what I mean? Because I could say, listen, I want to, get in crazy shape and I'm going to follow this extreme diet, and I could do it, I could recover and I could be fine. But every time I do that, it's more wear over time. It wears on your mind. Over time, you just kind of lose that. So I think my approach to training and nutrition in my 20s, if I could make it a little bit better, I would have made it a little more sustainable where I set myself up for my 30s.
Yeah, and that's perfect transition into the next phase, which is probably now at this point 28, 29, 30, all the way to where we are now, 35, is, family changes.
Yeah.
You're getting married, you're having a couple of kids, or your career's taking off, and that's really taken, the forefront of everything. How do you still fit the fitness in? How do you still stay in shape? How do you still build muscle in all this time? And again, time management is really the answer to all that. And I was saying this the other day. I'm now 5 weeks or 6 weeks into training at 4 a.m. And I wish I would have done this earlier. You have so much more time throughout the whole rest of the day to take care of life stuff. Whereas before, I usually would work out around lunchtime. I have that ability to work out around lunchtime. And it's just so much easier. For me, I can't work out at night. I don't like to work out at night. But I can't even imagine working out at night after a full day of work and all that other life stress. And if you have children and your children are involved and you have to go do things with the kids, that your time is not your own once you have kids. So for me, training at that 4 a.m. hours really, really significantly helped me. I think I'm getting better results doing that. It's over right away. I'm doing something for myself at that time. No one else is up. And now I'm at the point where everyone in my house goes to bed super early. So what am I doing from 9 o'clock to 12 anymore?
Right.
Nothing. What am I watching TV? I'm not doing anything productive. So I might as well just go to sleep, get up early, and do something for myself, and then have the whole rest of the day to get dedicated to work and everything else, to family. So I think that time management is the key to staying fit after 35 and so on. I think it's just that time management portion, because I think that period between 28 and 35, even 40, is your peak years for your career and your family life. So I think that time management during this time, and obviously having a flexible approach to your training and nutrition, is going to help you to sustain all your results and be able to stay fit.
Yeah, and one of the cool things, and nobody really talks about this too, this is something that I've actually found interesting as, like I said, I've kind of looked for ways to kind of set myself up for more of a long-term approach as I get older, is to maintain muscle and to maintain your body fat levels requires much less than it does to get you there in the first place. For me and you to build 1 more pound of muscle, that requires more work than the average person is even willing to do for 1 pound of muscle. Now, to maintain 100% of what we have is going to almost look effortless to the average person.
Yeah,
they're going to be the type of people that will say things like, wow, I can't believe you stay in such great shape, doing what you're doing. But if your goal was just maintaining, what's that going to require you to do? That's probably going to require you to go to the gym maybe, let's say, 3-4 times a week max. You could probably even get away with less if you wanted to. Counting your calories, just tracking your food and everything like that. You're not even going to be restricting yourself. You're just going to be making sure you don't overeat. And that's pretty much it. And you're talking about walking around with a physique that 90% of the population is not even willing to put in the work that requires you to get there. So I think, as you get older too, once you've kind of built that foundation and you've built that physique, if you're just getting started and you're going into your 40s and 50s, you're going to have to put in a little bit more work to get in shape. But if you're in shape and you've been doing this for years, the cool thing is maintaining it is going to require such little effort.
It's almost like passive income.
Pretty much.
You know how people strive to get passive income, even though that's not a thing. It doesn't exist.
Yes,
Stop looking for it. Nothing is
Nothing
truly
is
passive.
passive,
Nothing is passive.
No.
People talk about real estate. I have real estate. It's not passive.
No.
Anyway, but neither here nor there.
Yeah.
The point is that it's like passive because we've done so much to build it that it takes much less to maintain it. So it's like passive muscle.
I've heard people say before too when I was younger. Like guys that were very big and very strong in their 20s and 30s. Like I'm talking about guys maybe in the later 40s and 50s. Who tell me or used to tell me I go to the gym like once or twice a week right now. I don't really have the time to dedicate what I used to in my 20s, and they're still walking around with so much muscle.
Yeah.
And they told me I've trained so long, so heavy, so hard for so long that it's almost impossible for me to lose the muscle. At least if I come in here once or twice a week and I train, I'm maintaining like 95% of my results, and that's the cool thing. And like you said, it applies to other areas in life too. People are looking for passive income, things like that. Yeah, things can become passive in terms of to maintain it. It requires much less effort than it was to build. So even like if we're talking about business or things like that we say this is a passive stream to income, it might be so quote unquote passive now, but to get it to where it is now required a lot of work up front. And it's the same thing. With your body, you're doing all that work up front to build it. To maintain it, you're just maintaining it.
That's why I think it's important to have a coach early on, because I think if you could build those basics early on, then you have that time, okay, I know how to get lean, I know how to build muscle, I know what routine works for me, I know what doesn't work for me. Then you could go into like those 20s and 25, like that time, you could play. You say, you test this, test that, but you know what the basics are.
Yeah.
And then you got to learn time management. I think it's like important to figure out time management. And, being a personal trainer for all these years, that definitely has helped me with time management because I literally run my life in half-hour blocks. I've always done that, but that's the best time management system that you could ever have is running your day. And, okay, I'm going to do this at this time, this at this time. And everything kind of schedules out, and it makes fitting things in a lot easier. Because if you're just going to rely on, I'll go to the gym when I have time, you're never going to have the time. I promise you. You have to literally make an appointment with yourself and put
anything.
it in.
Anything I'm going to do when I have time. Yeah, I mean, as you get older too, that's one thing I can't do anymore. Can't just say, okay, I'll get to it when I get to it. It's got to have a specific time, and it has to be dedicated. That's it. Yeah.
All right, you want to summarize your point? Because I kind of summarized mine before.
With where exactly?
Staying in shape at 35, building muscle.
Yeah, I think for anybody that is looking to stay in shape, just like I said, my goal is I want to be in shape. I want to be in the gym the rest of my life. I still want to maintain this lifestyle. The key is get there as soon as you can. Take the approach that you need to get there, and then understand that once you get there, you don't have to maintain that 100% effort for the rest of your life. And I think that even applies to if we're not even talking about longevity. If we're talking about getting down to a body fat percentage, when I was younger, I always said it would be like a goal of mine is like I want to walk around with abs year round, and that just sounded ridiculous at the time because I didn't have abs. I had like a decent amount of body fat. And people look at that and they say, that must be so hard to maintain abs year round. If you take the approach to get down to it and then you keep consistent efforts, it's much less than you think. Because to get there, yes, it requires a lot of work up front. But then to maintain it requires much less effort. And I think if we're talking about your body in general, whether it's muscle, body fat, or anything, or strength, things like that, you're going to put in the work up front. And then, if you want to keep progressing, keep progressing. But if you want to just maintain, the amount of work it took me to get there is not the amount of work it's going to take to maintain it.